Okay, we're gonna see how this goes. So, I'm working on research for the next history video. This is not related to that topic that I do, but it is kind of history related, and I thought it might be interesting. If anyone finds this type of thing interesting. I've been doing a lot of historical based projects, so I have plans to make a Black Forest Germany outfit, so I'll be working on that this week. I'll start the skirt this week, even if it's just cutting it out, and a Civil War reenactment dress, and various projects like that. So I thought it might be kind of fun to share what I do and why I find it interesting, and give a little bit of history about the various projects, maybe how they relate to me as far as the historical side of it. So this one, a little backstory. I made leather moccasins when I was younger, and I really enjoyed them. They were very nice in the summer. I don't have the best leg muscles, so shoes in general are just hard for me. I don't get along with shoes, especially summer shoes. I prefer to go barefoot, but living in Nevada, it's too hot in the summer, and there are goat heads everywhere. And if you don't know what a goat head is, I should have brought one to show. But they are, so, I don't know, about the size of my fingertip. But they have very sharp thorns on almost all the sides of them. So if you go barefoot in pretty much anywhere in Nevada, you're likely to get a goat head embedded in your foot. That is why I decided to try the moccasins again. So here we have, for this I traced out my foot. This is just the exact shape of my foot. I have toes included on, let's see if you can see it. I might have held it too far. Toes included, but of course when I cut it out, sorry, the blur thing, I did not do the toes. I marked each foot and traced them individually, because most know our feet are different shapes, and I want these to fit really well, so I want them to be the exact size of each foot. So this is the exact measurement. This is the leather scraps I will be using. I have just a bag of various leather scraps. Can't remember where I got them. I think someone was giving them away or something. So I have these, and these will be the different pieces of the moccasin. They won't all be the same color. Like the bottom will be probably out of this black, which is pretty durable. I might do a second layer because it's just so hot here. And then, so this will be the bottom. This might go the top of the moccasin, and I will show a picture so you get an idea of what I'm doing. I should have had this pulled up before, but I didn't think of it until just now. I will be basing my moccasins on the Cherokee. Sorry, I'm trying to spell this on my phone. Cherokee moccasins, and I'm doing this because I have a little bit of Cherokee blood in me. So I decided, since I'm making moccasins, why not base them off of, because my grandpa on my mom's side is half Cherokee. So just kind of a fun way to look at my own history, I guess, if you're getting, you know where I'm going with this, I hope. Okay, so, sorry, on my phone. This is the style of the Cherokee moccasins. There's that upper flat part, and then the beading, which I want to attempt doing. I don't know if mine will be colorful beads like that. I don't have any. And the idea is for my projects to use up the supplies in my house and not buy more supplies or anything like that. So the beads I will be using. Sorry, my work table is a mess. I was doing pottery earlier and it got everywhere. These are the beads I currently have. So I'll be using just very likely these. They did use very small beads. I saw a Navajo woman doing the beadwork for Brett's one time. It was really interesting. Unfortunately, the Brett's that she made and I had broke, and I've been very sad about that. I had them when I was very small. Okay, so with the exact sizing of my foot, I obviously can't do the leather to the exact sizing because I will have to puncture holes around to fit the side bases. So I'm going to have to make them bigger. And to do that, I want to trace, but just add a little bit so that when I cut the leather, I won't be wasting any leather. So, yeah, I'm going to trace out here, and then I will trace out the right. And once I have that done, I will put it on the leather and start cutting the leather. So, yes, but I don't want you to have to endure to watch me cut out paper, so short break. Okay, I am back. Okay, so these are the traced out. Again, they're quite larger. They will tend to fold up a little bit as I sew them onto the strip of piece that's going to go around them. I didn't measure them. My idea was to have this much of a difference. I did it by eyesight, or sight, I don't know what you call that. Not the most technical way, but I don't know, I do a lot of things that way. It's probably maybe not the best habit I have, but you know, I have other crafters and they can all cringe at my I don't know, where was I going with that? So this is how my brain works. It just can't sometimes. That's why I am very much a hermit when I get off of work. I've used up all my social skills at work and I come home and become a hermit. Okay, so I'm going to cut these out, as you can see. And I turned it back on now, even though watching me cut these out is quite boring, to explain a little bit about some of the design, I guess you could call it, on various clothes the Indians wore. For those who don't know, like, I hope I don't sound like I'm assuming, I don't know. I just feel weird sharing history. Like, I don't want to feel like I'm talking down to people. Like, how dare you not know this? I just love sharing it. So, I'm like that anime character that adjusts their glasses and goes, "Did you know?" But anyway. So, back to the clothing. A lot of the, if you go to a museum and look at moccasins in the museum, they do tend to have the matching leather. That was my dog, sorry. It isn't always exactly how it was. Because of course they were out, you know, hunting various animals. You have to use up everything you have. They had, you know, used up everything. I'm going to be saving these in case I want to make others in the future. So, making my moccasins with, you know, different colored scraps could technically be historically accurate because, again, they don't always have the exact same leather to match. Okay, so about the leather though, and this is interesting, at least I found it was, the ways they treated the leather. So they would, skin the animals they hunted, and then I think in this area, I live in Nevada, so the Washoe Indians were in this area. I'm originally from Wyoming. There's just different tribes there that were there. One of the primary things that would have been hunted would be deer. A lot of smaller game though too. Rabbits, fish. Fish were very, kind of easy to catch, I suppose you could say. A lot of fish. But they did need the other animals because they needed the hides. So, they get the deer, and they use all the parts. These are my leather scissors. I'm one of those weirdos that have scissors for everything. These are paper. They could be used on fabric, but they don't work. Leather can't be used on anything but leather. My sewing scissors only used on fabric. Yes, I'm one of those people. Okay, so anyway, speaking of wanting to save everything, the idea of putting, you probably can't see, but I traced this in pen. Putting the sole of the shoe in the middle of the leather wouldn't be done because they would want to save as much of the leather as possible. So it'd be more to the end and stuff. But with the deer, so let's say they went out and they hunted their deer and brought them back. The women of the tribes, usually there were certain tribes where the men would. It's interesting to look into each tribe and see how their different cultures were. But the women would skin the deer, get the meat saved. They would save every piece of the meat. Hopefully this doesn't get too gross. They would also save the organs, heart, and the brain, but they wouldn't eat that. So they would, get all the meat prepared, cured. They would dry it a lot and do jerky. So they would stretch it out in the sun between the teepees or wigwams or, whatever various household they lived in. Again, each tribe could differ on the form of what their home would look like. The Indians in this region where I currently am, the Washoe, had teepees because they traveled up to Tahoe in the summer and came down to the valley in the winter. So it was just easier that way. But the meat would be, cured, dried, and saved so that they would have enough to get through the winter season and so forth. The hide would be taken, and they had, hopefully most of you know what I'm talking about. The idea kind of looks similar to those laundry stands. I think it's a common thing in apartments because save on dryer. But it's okay. This is not dimension accurate, but this idea and stretch out and lean has like a stand in the back, so lean back, and they would take the hide and they would stretch it to the corners, and they would let it dry. And as it was drying in the sun, they would rub. Again, hopefully this is not too graphic. I very much find this interesting. Learned about this when I was a little girl. I have always found it interesting, but some people, it's not quite what you want to hear on a YouTube channel. They would take the brain and the heart, and they would rub it on the drying leather to soften the leather, and make it more where they could work with it. Because if you dry leather, hide in the sun, it will become very stiff and hard to cut. And they didn't have scissors, obviously. They had the bone tools to cut, so anything to make it easier. And they would dry that in the sun. They would also take the bone of the deer. Again, they didn't waste anything. They would make tools with that. And they would take the bone and scrape it on the leather as it was drying to continue softening it and making it where it was easier for them to work with. So once that was done, they could make well, they made anything with it. Shoes, clothes, anything they needed. Also, those that had teepees, they made the teepee covers. Those were usually made with a lot of different hides, because obviously a deer is not going to provide a big enough hide to cover a whole teepee. So it would be patchwork in a way. I think if you look, you can find pictures of some of the teepees, which is an interesting thing to look up. It's pretty cool for those interested. With the clothing, obviously they had different ones for winter and summer. On the winter, you would put another hide bear, if you could get it, on the inside to help keep the warmth in as they were out. And with the fringes, so this is interesting, I found. You can see it now in remakes of Indian costumes, clothing. They have the, or even cowboy mountain men ones, they have the fringes hanging down. So they have like pretend this is the shirt, and then there's fringes on it, which, you know, looks, considering they're saving all their leather, that does appear like a waste of leather to have this decorative little fringe hanging down. But what it did was, when the men were out hunting, if something they were wearing tore, they would pull off the fringe and use that leather to fix it. So that is why they had the fringes. And the mountain men who interacted with the Indians ended up using that idea, because, you know, it's pretty handy to have extra string on you, thread, that you don't have to carry in your pocket and risk it falling out. For those that sew on the go, as you say, no, probably from experience, or maybe that's just me pedaling to work with embroidery floss in my pocket and have to walk back when it falls out. Okay, so there. We've got the left foot cut out, and then we have, I'm going to keep the papers with them so I don't mix them up, the right foot cut out. And again, this is the more durable side, so this will go outside. So there. Okay, now I'm going to set these aside somewhere on my work table. It's very crowded because I have various projects I'm working on. And I'm going to go make some dinner and tea, and I will return. Bye! Oops. Oh. Okay, so I've had my dinner and my first cup of tea for the evening, and I am back for and then I spent some time trying to organize my supplies. I found out I had wool roving from my spinning wheel mixed in with my scraps of leather, and I'm trying to organize the various items I have for projects so they're more orderly and I can find them on the first go, instead of having to wander my house wondering where I put, for instance, leather thread, and then questioning myself as to why it's mixed with wool roving or spare crossbow strings. So yes, that was part of my evening. I hope to accomplish a bit more of it when I finish up here. I did a bit more looking into, so the one picture I originally showed of the moccasins that I'm going to try and base mine off is this one. And it looked at first glance that this would be a wraparound piece, and then a separate piece for this part here. But when I looked at it closer, I realized that this top piece is not sewn onto this kind of what I assumed was a wraparound piece. So I looked at another picture and I found this one. And it's hard to tell on here, but it's easier to see the, let's see if I can zoom up a little bit on it. Easier to see where the thread lines are, which is right here. I do believe that the sole of the shoe is it's a half piece. So cut in half. You have this half over here, and then this half, and it's just two pieces and put together. I will be keeping these soles because again, I live in Nevada, and doing a single sole at all in general with the goat heads and heat, I did want something a bit more on the bottom to reinforce it. So these I'll be keeping. I will be setting these aside for now. I would like, as best as I am able, with the scraps of leather I have, to do them the base exactly like the Cherokee base. The top piece, this little flap piece right here, I might have to do as a separate piece, only because, again, I have scraps of leather and not huge pieces of it. So that said, this is going to be the base, pretty much. Now this is going to take some creative thinking and possibly some drafting. I'll have to pull out my drafting notebook if that is the case, but we will see. As a just quick sketch bit on this leather, what would happen. I will be using my pencil, so it's not quite as noticeable. Not that you're going to be seeing it anyway, because this will be the inside of my foot here. And who wants to see the inside of my shoes? My feet are sweaty? Yeah, there you go. You want to know that information, right? Totally. Okay, so this is the sole of the shoe, and it looks like it comes out, again, please pardon my work table, I have so much stuff on it, and I'm working on this stuff. It's not like there's projects sitting around never to be worked on. I just shift between projects depending on what needs done quickest. So because this is one solid piece, I'm going to have to pretend this is in half, cutting a line down here and coming out here. But again, I do as best I can, not with choice leather, and because this is the larger cutout of the foot, I can turn it this way. Now the basic idea, it looks like, is to bring these edges up, and I will be stitching along this end right here to hold it closed, as is seen on here, which I think is why, oops, wrong one. Okay, so just a kind of concept idea, so you can kind of see the difference between a more modern style of a what would you call it? Not reenactment. Anyone who knows the word, let me know. Again, my brain, it doesn't like to be a brain. And I don't know how to do technology, so pardon my zooming methods. See how the stitching goes along, and there is a separate piece for the bottom, and then you have the top piece. This is more of a modern remake. But if I'm going with the original as much as I can, the idea is, and this is why it has more of a point, is because the stitch goes all along this edge instead of around it. And this is what I'm going to attempt. So given that, the stitch edge is going to be here. It'll be going up and over. With that in mind, I do want to keep enough of width for my foot to fit into it, and kind of just fold over is what I'm thinking the general idea will be, and then bringing it up at an angle around my foot, and if possible leaving enough for the flap up here, which I should be able to do if I adjust the leather properly. So it's going to, as far as I can tell it now, I'm going to go over some pictures and draft on my pattern drafting notebook. From what I can tell from that photo at the moment, I'm going to come up and over, and this part will be more on level with the top of my foot, and then up and over again to leave room for the flap, and then come down onto this back end here, and then the stitching will go from here, and then when we get to the right before the ankle on the foot, I will cut off the stitching there, and then I will come up the back and close it right here. So that's what I'm thinking is the basic pattern they used. Be looking into it with a bit more research though, because what's that rule? Measure twice, cut once. I think it's kind of the same with drafting a pattern. Do once, or do twice, cut once. For the actual stitching, these are the equipment I will be using. This is the punch, which I will, I'll demonstrate as I go. You dig it into the leather, make a hole, all that. I have waxed leather thread, which I'll be sewing with. Originally, when I have done leather work before with this thread, I knot it as tightly as I can, but the knot tends to come undone. Maybe I'm not pulling it tight enough. With the moccasins, I do not want that to happen. So on the way home from walking dogs today, one of my jobs, I had the idea that when I come up and then I come up again, I will have these two strands. It's very hard to see. So there's two strands, but if I was to do it a third time and leave a loop, I could braid, I would have 3 strands. And I could braid them, which would give me a thicker strand at the end. And then with the braid, I could pin it as I'm sewing along. I can tuck it in here and also stitch it in various places, like put the needle through and thread through to make sure that it is very unlikely to come undone. Again, I will demonstrate as I go along. For needles, let me open these. I have leatherwork needles. Hopefully my favorite needle is in here. I believe it is. I've used these before. This is the curved needle, which I don't tend to generally use. Well, honestly, I haven't used it once since doing leather work. I'm sure at some point it will come in handy. A very long needle. Let's see. For those wondering, yes, sewing leather can be very painful because they're very sharp points. Maybe for those with good coordination and grace and elegance and I don't know what else you would call it. Don't jab themselves quite brutally in the finger, but that is not me. So this unique needle, I don't know if you can tell, it has this little bend on it. It is also flat, as opposed to being round all the way up. So that needle, that is called the sack needle for sewing. Sacks, bags, and hampers. Look at this. Details of the needles. And I have to find the ones that fell out. The governor's needle. That's a good one. Sewing leather and furs. And then this little needle, which if I can't find my favorite needle, I will probably end up going with this one. I might trade it out for the longer one. Okay, so generally the idea is you puncture the holes in to the leather, you thread the needle, and then you go through the holes. You want to get it as tightly as possible. For this I won't need it as tight. If it was to be a winter shoe, you would want it to especially tight, and then they would probably put some form of waterproof oil over it, and I will look into that and see what Cherokees would have used for that, because again, they would need to waterproof their shoes. We do it now. We have a good pair of hiking boots, we waterproof them. I waterproofed my hiking boots before I went to the jungle because I didn't want sopping wet feet and make them extra smelly when I got back to camp. It might have helped a little bit, but yeah, anyway. Okay, so that's where I'm at. It's getting kind of late, and I have to work at 5 tomorrow at the well, I have to be up at 5 tomorrow to get ready to go coffee shop. I have some embroidery to do before bed, because that is my more urgent project, but I will pick this up again tomorrow. I'll probably draft a pattern tonight. And maybe, okay, I don't know if you can see, I'm going to kind of turn the camera. We've got some scattered goods here. We have my necklace making molds here. We have my homemade candle here that I'm trying to perfect. And yes, it is also, I don't know if you can tell, it is also covered in what's the word I'm looking for? Clay. Because I was spinning a piece of pottery today. I'm trying to get back where I can spin pottery and not have it fall to pieces. So we have bits of pottery here, and if you can see on my lovely tablecloth of my work table, pottery, clay, proof of how disaster it got today. We have Aragorn here, who sits at my work table and is covered in pottery. Gilly used to sit here. Where is he? He is currently on my work table because he needs repaired. All of my repair projects end up here. He used to sit here. He was my, I don't know if you can see him. It's not gonna focus, is it? He was my workspace buddy. But the last attempt at pottery, he got covered in it, and now he doesn't like to be at this table. He prefers to be at my typewriter desk, where it is safer for him. But as long as he keeps me company. Aragorn is probably going to desire to move as well once I clean him up. So yeah. At this rate, I have no working buddies at this table. They've all moved to safer locations. I will probably clean up this disaster. Hopefully organize myself a little bit better. But I hope you enjoy this, and if find a way to improve the history storytelling videos, and maybe share historical type crafts as I do them. Might make them a bit more interesting. A bit more, yeah, less staring at me. Also, it makes it less awkward for me because I don't have to sit and stare at myself in the camera. I can focus on the craft and ramble with my historical knowledge that I've acquired and somehow. So if you like this idea, I'm thinking of changing the format of my history videos. If you feel like commenting and letting me know, you can. But yeah, I do a variety of historical type, I don't know if you call them hobbies or crafts throughout my day. Just historical type things. Churn butter, spin on the spinning wheel, that type of thing. So it might give an idea of things you might like to try. If they're not necessarily related to history per se. Just trying hands-on crafts, making sure they don't go away, because a lot of these crafts do, in a sense, seem to be fading. So it'd be nice to keep them around. But yeah. If you have sat through this whole thing, thank you. And I'm gonna go make some tea and clean up my table. So I will return for part 2 and hopefully have another history sharing video up by Sunday at the latest. So goodbye. And that's all. Goodbye again.